What is going on, all you bus nuts, geeks, and enthusiasts out there? Welcome to another episode of Motorcoach World. My name is James. Bus drivers spend a lot of time behind the wheel of their buses. Whether they drive a city transit bus, school bus, or a coach bus, to say that this little space of theirs is their office is pretty accurate. In some cases, it's an understatement. For motorcoach drivers in the US, they can spend up to 15 hours a day or up to 70 hours a week in the cockpit of a motorcoach, logging thousands of miles traveling all over North America. Definitely not banker's hours. With that said, it's not surprising that coach bus drivers tend to form a bond or some kind of attachment to these giant pieces of equipment after all they've been through together.
Would you three like to be alone?
So the question that gets asked by some of my viewers, as well as many driver applicants during interviews, is, do coach bus drivers get assigned their own bus? Well, the simple answer is, it depends. Today, we're going to take a look at why some motorcoach companies assign their drivers designated buses and why some don't, and what are the benefits of doing so or not doing so. At Peoria Charter, the company that I work at, drivers are typically not assigned their own coach. On our line run side, we do try to assign a bus to each route, and we don't change them up very often unless a bus needs to be taken out of service for repairs or routine maintenance. So if a driver is always driving that particular route, then he or she may feel like they kind of have their own assigned bus. But if that driver drives a different route or goes on a charter trip, then he or she may find themselves on a different bus for the day or however long their trip is. For our charter side, our fleet coordinator works with our technicians and dispatch in order to choose what coach is going on what trip, and then a driver will be assigned to the trip and bus. The decision of selecting a bus for a trip usually depends on the distance and duration of the trip, as well as the needs of the client. For example, if you have a client that's a sports team that has a lot of long pole vault pulls, obviously it would be better to assign a coach that has open frame luggage bays so that the poles will fit through the bays rather than, say, like closed frame box luggage bays where anything really long won't really fit down in the bays. Also, newer model buses tend to be placed on longer distance and longer duration trips, whereas our older equipment are usually relegated to closer trips or shuttling / back and forth type of trips. But aside from that, the other benefit of not assigning drivers permanently to a specific bus are things like hours of service limitations, where a driver can only drive up to 10 hours a day, but a bus can keep going and going as long as it has fuel. For trips that take longer than 10 hours, a driver of a coach bus will have to go off duty at some point, and usually we will have him or her switch out with another driver that usually drives a company van to a switch out point the day before, so that the passengers can keep going forward without having to stop and stay at a hotel for a day and wait for the driver to rest and reset his or her hours. For some companies who hire a lot of part-time drivers, when the driver is not working, his or her bus is just sitting there, which is bad for the company. At $500,000 or more for a coach bus, you really don't want your buses sitting on the lot because the driver that's assigned to it decided to take a week off work. On the flip side of that, if a bus goes down for maintenance, the driver that's assigned to it won't like it if he or she is not being assigned to any work while the technicians are waiting a few weeks on a part to come in order to repair the coach. Overall, the logistics of companies with larger size fleets that have lots of trips coming in or out makes it easier when a driver is not assigned to a particular bus. If you look at any large airline or city transit agencies that have large size fleets and high volumes of trips, neither the pilots or the drivers are permanently assigned to a plane or bus. The pilots or drivers are essentially equipment movers, and doing it this way saves the company a lot of downtime for their fleet and their operators. Now, there are many motorcoach companies all around the world that do assign their drivers their own bus. I used to drive for a smaller coach bus company way back in the day called Bales Unlimited. Bill Bales, the owner of the company, operated a fleet of 8 coaches at the time, and he assigned his full-timers to their own bus. Now, the key word there is full-timers. For many companies that do assign coaches permanently to the drivers, will typically either only hire full-time drivers or only assign full-time drivers to their own bus. As mentioned before, a part-time driver schedule will cause too much sitting for a coach bus, which would cost the company a lot of money. But for the companies that believe in dedicating a driver to a bus, there are definitely many benefits to doing things this way as well. For one, when you assign a driver his or her own bus, the driver really takes ownership of it. I mean, a driver assigned to his or her own bus will take better care of it and get to know it better, making it easier for them to identify sounds or vibrations that may indicate that coach may need maintenance soon. When you spend around 70 hours a week driving a vehicle, you tend to start getting to know what sounds or characteristics it should and should not do. In turn, this will actually save the company money on repairs and preventative maintenance, as the drivers will, again, take much better care of their equipment. Another benefit as far as maintenance goes, if a bus is being driven by the same person, it's easier for the maintenance department to detect poor or problematic driving habits. For example, if a bus is constantly getting really poor or below average miles per gallon, the maintenance team can easily detect if the driver has a lead foot or constantly flooring it on acceleration. If a bus is constantly coming back with tire wall damage, it's safe to say that the driver assigned to it is constantly curbing it on turns or running against curb sides, indicating that maybe more training is needed. For companies that do long distance trips all the time for their clients, it also makes it easier to know who is where, since the bus number and driver name are always associated with each other. This helps with constantly knowing where all of your employee and equipment are at any given time, making situational awareness easier for those handling logistics back at base. It also benefits with helping passengers with lost items. With thousands of passengers that use your motor coach to get to where they need to be, you're bound to find all kinds of things that they leave behind. And I do mean all kinds of things. Sometimes it gets a little weird with the type of stuff you can find left behind on a coach bus. I'm gonna save this topic for its own video actually, so stay tuned for that one. But a bus with a designated driver will definitely make it easier for tracking lost and found items when a passenger calls in to see if anyone's found his or her cell phone. You're not gonna have to track down all the drivers that have driven that bus in the last week or so to ask if they've seen it. There's also a certain bit of pride knowing that this bus is yours and yours only. Kind of like a captain getting command of a ship.
Hello, ship.
Now, this pride will definitely start to show when handling clients and passengers. It may also give the driver more of a reason to stay working for your company rather than being recruited away to somewhere else. You would be surprised at how attached some drivers get with their buses. Peoria Charter purchased a bus from a bus company that was downsizing about 6 or 7 years ago, and when we got the bus, the driver actually came with it. He came and started driving for us because he wanted to stay with his coach. In fact, I think he just got back from a trip to Minnesota last night, so he still works for us. Assigning drivers their own bus will also give the company another way to incentivize good performance by assigning the safest and best performing drivers with the newest buses as the company adds more to their fleet. Or some drivers may prefer a certain make or model of coach, and if they perform well, the company can reward the driver with the dream coach that they've always wanted to drive and the one that they want to stick with. Now, if you drive or work for a coach bus company, please let me know whether or not your company assigns buses to their drivers, and please let me know what you like or don't like about it down in the comments below. I would love to hear everyone else's perspective on this. Hey, one more thing before I end today's video. I want to bring up our featured bus nut today, Jim Littler. Jim has been a follower of my channel for a while now. Jim worked for New Flyer for over 30 years, building city transit buses in Winnipeg. He's been involved with every stage of the assembly and production process, as well as troubleshooting. Sounds like someone I would love to have at my company in the garage working on my fleet. A true bus nut for life. Jim is currently in the hospital fighting for his life. I won't go into the details of his condition, but please be sure to send your thoughts and prayers for our fellow bus nut geek and enthusiast, Jim Littler. He definitely needs some positive energy flowing his way right now. Jim, if you're watching this, you are part of the motor coach world.